Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. Starting off with a little bit of, excuse me, a little bit of that. A little bit of things adjacent. So the corporate Democrats want you to stop listening to the progressive, women, AOC, and Ilhan Omar, and Ayanna Pressley, etc. And Pelosi, is basically kind of okaying everything that Trump's doing because she's really actually a Republican posing as a Democrat. She's bought and sold. Anyways, just wanted to shout out, she's being primaried in 2020 by a man named Shahir Buttar. Or Shahid Buttar, excuse me. Sorry about that. He is a progressive. He basically wants to get Nancy Pelosi out of office, and she should be out of office post haste. She is not a friend of the Democratic Party. She's not a friend of progressives. She is everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party. And she is handing things to Trump hand over fist. And they look like sometimes like they're almost working in league together. This is not, not okay. This is not acceptable. There should be much more resistance by Democrats, especially in the House, against Trump. There's not a lot of resistance to all the things that Trump is doing. There's not the Democrats gave him a lot of, money for the border. They were like, well, we won't give you $6 billion, but we'll give you, three. Here's three. We'll vote for your military spending increases. Yes, here's more money. Here you go, Trump. Hey, Trump, how come you're not bombing, Iran right now? How come you're not bombing Syria? I thought you wanted to go to Venezuela. That's actually what Democratic leaders are saying, because the Republican / Democratic leaders are trying to tell you that, oops, that was weird. They actually want Trump to, do high level evil, and they're okay with that. They're okay with going to war and staying in wars and fighting wars and sending kids to wars. They're fine with that. So, anyways, wanted to let you know about Shahid Buttar. If you live in the area, please get out the word and let's get this incumbent out of office, who is not helping people. So I'm going to read this article. It's a bit in depth. I'm going to read through it quickly, but basically the title is "Population Growth is Not a Driver of Climate Change." And the idea basically is that it's efficiency that is a driver of climate change. It seems so easy to blame excess population for our planet's woes. It could hardly appear more straightforward. People consume resources. More people means more consumption. If we have any prayer of reducing our collective damages to the environment, we must make fewer babies. There's a well-known equation first devised in 1970 by John Holdren and Paul Ehrlich called the IPAT identity. Impact equals population times affluence times technology. The environmental impact of society is proportional to our population, our GDP per person, affluence, and the environmental damages per unit of GDP technology. On the face of it, the IPAT identity is totally clear and dimensionally irrefutable. An increasingly affluent and growing population is going to have an increasing impact on its environment. A step further is the Kaya identity, which looks specifically at the impact from carbon dioxide emissions and breaks down technology into two components: energy efficiency measured as annual energy consumption per annual GDP, and carbon intensity measured as CO2 emissions per energy. That's emissions equals population times GDP / population over population times energy over GDP times CO2 over energy. Again, at least on the face of it, nothing is wrong with this expression. Modifying any of population, affluence, energy efficiency, and carbon intensity will allow us to help the environment. We can maintain our affluence and reduce carbon dioxide emissions provided that we invest in energy efficiency, switch to renewables, and support birth control. What's not to like? Certainly, countless politicians and scientists have argued that with sufficient political will, we can accomplish these combined goals to save our planet while supporting our economy. The devil is that the Kaya and IPAT identities are constructed so that affluence, energy efficiency, and population can be seen as being largely independent of one another, making it seem possible to tweak one without affecting the other. In fact, each of the ingredients of the Kaya and IPAT identities can be better seen as symptoms, not causes. One perspective is that, broadly put, civilization is a heat engine. A heat engine. What this means is that all of the internal circulations defining what we do in civilization are driven by a consumption of energy, mostly fossil, and dissipation of waste heat, including carbon dioxide as a byproduct. From this perspective, only about 1/20th of the total caloric consumption by civilization as a whole is due to the caloric consumption of people themselves. The remainder is used to support the appetites of everything else, like the energy required for industry, transportation, and communications. Globally averaged, people have each about 20 energy slaves working around the clock to help them accomplish all of civilization's tasks. People themselves are a relatively small proportion of the world's total resource consumption. Okay. Imagine someone visiting each Earth for the first time, knowing nothing ahead of time about the planet or its inhabitants. The visitor would witness all the marvelous phenomena of the Earth, atmosphere, and oceans. Maybe they would even have a special sensor that they use to detect massive plumes of heat, particulates, carbon monoxide, and carbon dioxide emitted into the atmosphere from all over the planet. Some from small stationary sources and others moving quickly across the oceans and land. Almost all would come from objects made of steel. The visitor would probably fail to perceive people and conclude they are insignificant relative to civilization's machinery. You, as a staunchly proud human, might tell the visitor that they are missing important context. It's people who are running the machines, not the other way around, and that the measured environmental impacts are proportional to population. But this perspective is based on a belief that people are independent drivers of environmental impacts that make and grow babies independent of environmental conditions and affect the environment proportionately. As a counterweight to this perspective, in an article I wrote in 2009, I presented an alternative to the IPAT identity using some physics to derive equation 12. It was shown that population growth rate plus affluence growth rate equals lambda times energy efficiency plus energy efficiency growth rate. So I'm lost on that equation, as maybe some other people are. Some people know what's going on. Where the symbol lambda had a constant value of 0.22 exajoules per year per year 2005 trillion per 2005 trillion USD. For example, for the period 1970 to 2015, plugging numbers into the equation gives the following for an annual growth rate of each of the terms. 1.5% plus 1.5% equals 0.22 times 0.089 times 100% plus 1%, where the value 0.089 has units of inflation-adjusted year 2005 trillion USD per exajoule, simplifying. 1.5% plus 1.5% equals 2% plus 1%, or 3% equals 3%. Okay. To get on the other side of that, both sides of the equation add up to 3% per year. This is pretty cool. A simple equation for the growth of humanity derived using physics rather than the economics. Then economics agrees surprisingly well with what is actually observed. What does that all mean? The upshot is that being energy efficient, as on the right-hand side of the equation, is what enables civilization as a whole, not just the national level, to increase its population and affluence. As on the left-hand side of the equation, if we become more energy efficient, we accelerate growth of population and affluence and increase our environment impact. It is not the reverse. Moreover, because the first term on the right-hand side of the equation, current energy efficiency, reflects the history of prior energy efficiency gains, and we cannot erase the past. Past advances in energy efficiency are effectively the single parameter that determines current growth of population and affluence. Intellectually, this is a really nice simplification that removes some of the uncertainty in making long-run forecasts of population and affluence. On the other hand, it might seem totally counterintuitive. Understandably, most would assume that we can increase energy efficiency and independent of population and affluence, and more importantly, increasing energy efficiency will reduce our overall environmental impact. Let's buy a Prius. But this comes back to the previous point that the components of the Kaya and iPat identities are coupled symptoms of something more important. To understand how each iPat component is linked through the equation above, it is necessary to understand a bit about the very special nature of how a self-organizing civilization operates like a heat engine. The heat engine in your car is of a fixed size. Civilization differs because it can grow. It grows because it is able to successfully use energy to incorporate raw materials from its environment into its internal structure. If civilization is energy efficient, then it is able to rapidly incorporate raw materials into its structure. Energy efficient civilizations are productive and grow quickly. There are two ways we can witness this material growth. One is that population increases. We ourselves are constructed from raw materials. The other is that we increase the amount of our stuff or our economic affluence. With greater efficiency, we can have faster growth and more of everything, more people included. Interestingly, as shown above, increased energy efficiency appears to increase population and affluence in roughly equal parts, both 1%, 1.5% per year. So does population growth matter? Well, I think it's the wrong question. Instead, it makes more sense to ponder the external forces that control the energy efficiency of civilization as a whole and how efficiently it can use energy resources to incorporate raw materials from the environment. Waves of accelerated discovery and exploitation of coal and oil that began around 1880 and 1950 preceded unprecedented explosions in population and affluence. Looking ahead, many question whether we will sustain continued resource discovery. If we can't, what does a declining civilization look like? If we can, what is the end game when there are inevitably accelerating negative impacts on the environment? Interesting article. Yeah, I don't totally... Yes, efficiency increases energy use generally. But that doesn't mean that as we get more efficient. What my question about this is decreasing human population, increasing efficiency on some level, right? If we decrease human population, the understanding is that if you decrease human population, you could use more stuff. And that's probably how that might work out, unless people understood at the same time that they're going to decrease human population and energy use at the same time. That would have to be the understanding going forward in any kind of assessment of environmental impacts or what path we would take to mitigate the impacts of climate change. And we're not going to mitigate the impacts of past climate change. We're going to have a hard time doing that because we've already emitted a lot of, as this article states, we've already done damage. Anyways, I'd like to know your thoughts on this. I'm on the fence. Obviously, yes, civilization is a heat engine. And it's hard to get away with that, from that, but who knows? This is just one person's idea, an interesting one nonetheless. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for your time, for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.